Everybody. Alright, this is the Curvature of the Firmament video. And I wanted to bring you something that nobody else really had. And I was looking through just a couple random mathematics videos, and I came upon something that was relatively unique. And it got me thinking of trajectory, curvature, and all the mathematical sciences you can name. And then I came to a realization when watching this that even the firmament that we're told exists has the wrong shape. And it's obvious when you're watching this, the math, and I'll show you the video in a little while along with other things, why everybody kind of is even looking at the shape of the firmament wrong. Now, this is actually kind of interesting when you think about it, because nobody can get the curvature of, say, the atmosphere right. Okay, it's straight across. Great. At a certain height, it's straight across. Great, we get it. Now, what about the actual firmament? Well, we know that the sun and the moon are there, and from what we understand, it's inside. But what about the actual features of the actual firmament itself? See, everybody calls it a dome, and I think that this is misrepresented in terms of how we actually view what this actually is. If you look at the mathematical modeling of a 360-degree circle, folks, there is a formula that basically states that the number, or the number rather, of any major, part of the circle is 9. And this number has to do with the number system in and of itself. No matter what language you look into, no matter what it is, you add up all the major numbers, it comes to 36. And all the major numbers come back to 9. And even when looking at a circle, you can actually see this feature come to light. And I come to a conclusion, and I'll kind of give you the short version in a second, as to how the actual dome or firmament is actually set up. Now, the reason we can't get the actual shape is because it's not really a complete dome. There is no one number which works all the way across. And I was thinking, of course, of the 9mm Luger round. And I thought that makes so much more sense, at least in a mathematical model, to how a dome would actually be represented. Because remember, Earth is not supposedly a planet. It's supposedly a habitat, a zoological experiment, Truman Show, you name any number of things, it is. It has a circular base, and then it has an elongated, almost triangular, almost pyramidical or pyramid-like dome. And that's exactly what I think the dome shape looks like. And I'm going to back that up with real-life mathematics coming. And I have my reasons for this, because this makes sense. Now, I'm not going to go into the mathematical modeling of the 9mm because there's standard, there's AP, there's all kinds of points and everything else. But you do see that that is a 9mm. And the magic number for circles is 9. And I'll get into the reasoning for that in a minute. Okay, so basically this is coming from testing the globe, and this really kind of goes into the biblical study a little bit, but it kind of goes into why 9 is such a good number and why it basically is the circle of the earth. And it'll go into the reasoning for that as soon as I get it started. I'm doing this under an educational 360 degrees circle. Why? Do you think this is arbitrary? The 180 is supposed to be where the sun and moon are. The 90 is the 4 quarters. 45 degrees, 22.5, 11.25, 5.625, 2.81, and so on and so forth. The resulting angle is always to 9, reduces to 9 in a circle. I apologize. Now I will show you the actual video. I apologize, folks. I was preparing you. Why is there 360 degrees? Is it arbitrary in a circle? The resulting angle always reduces to 9. For what unit you're referring to, the resulting angle of a 360 circle of a base no matter how you do it, the mathematical angle of that circle is 9. Now, because you have that feature, you cannot really say that it has to be all the way across or it has to be all the way up. In fact, I think the diameter and the dome shape of an actual 9mm Luger actually represents a lot closer to what a dome on a planet would actually look like. Now, I know it's not exact, but I do believe it to be elongated to a certain point, far bigger than the actual, general flat Earth models actually are. I think it's at least twice as high as this, and, you know, that can be shrunk down to the modeling size of the Earth and everything else. And I think that would allow a lot more cosmos and a lot more sun and moon orbit, because over here they're kind of hitting the top of the feature here, and if you look at the top here, it kind of looks like it's semi-different shape than the rest. But if I were to be a betting man, I would say any number would be that if the body of the planet, etc., whatever you want to call it, is actually a circle or near circle, the actual dome is a lot more elongated than a traditional standard dome top. And that is my reasoning. This is just a picture from the internet of somebody's guesstimate as to what basically a beach ball type dome would look like, when I think in reality the dome is a lot more of a ballistic tip origin, coming out at least, I would say, halfway to the V&A of the actual curvature word. I would say that's how much more elongated it is, at least by another third, if not a quarter. And that comes down to the simple mathematics, beyond a reasonable doubt, that no matter whether or not our Earth in and of itself is an absolute perfect circle, which it probably isn't, but there's ways that we can work the math, that the angle of a circle always comes back to 9. Now, that's interesting because NASA even says that the curvature of the Earth is 7, some say 8, and they got to square it. They got to do all this fancy math, and I'm not even going to bother to show you the equations, because the equations don't get it right, because the equations are based on point-for-point reference, and it doesn't really give you the idea that it has a ballistic top, whether it's a dome or simply the curvature or the non-curvature of the actual Earth. Because I think that the actual atmosphere, what we see, is nearly flat, 1, 2, 3 degrees, that's it. And then the dome on top, the firmament, would actually meet the quota for being something very similar to having a flat bottom like this and an angular tubular shape over here that matches the circumference and the diameter of the actual dome top here. Now, wouldn't it tip over? Wouldn't there be trajectory issues? Well, there's all sorts of questions, but the idea is, if you're talking about something that is relatively an actual circle and you want to get into the actual mathematics, these are the things you actually have to talk about. And there are actual reasons why this is probably nearly the truth. Because I guarantee you, at the top of it, it's a lot taller than the sides and everything else, and I believe it to be probably a better representation of a curvature of a ballistic to 9 millimeter than anything else. I know I said I wasn't going to show you the curvature. It can, and I'll show you the mathematics involved in terms of the show you everything else. What you're looking at here. Radius of the curvature and the equation of the radius is there. Now, they use a lot of different math, and they basically try to find the radius by this, dividing it by 2, squaring it, plus doing a whole lot of fancy stuff. And you know what? I've done this in math classes before. It gets here, and that's actually pretty good. Now, here's one. It's going to end up popping that up. Yep. Alright, here we go. This is basically what I'm thinking in terms of the actual planetary body. In our actual planet, the firmament, this would actually be flipped. This would actually be, the pyramid part would be up on top, and this part would be the bottom. So this part would be the top, and it comes out to almost a near pyramid or projectile shape. That is why we can't find the major radius of it, because it is barely circular, if possible at all. Now, do I really believe it angular? I believe it closer to that of a 9mm, honestly. I believe it's tubular and angular at the same time, and a lot sharper than what we're being told. That is what I believe. Now, don't worry about it. I have other sources here which say, you know, one thing versus another. And I have, let's see here. Here is my curvature. So you saw the magic number is 9 for a circle. And you saw everything did. Now, what I'm going to do is show you that this guy here, really weird.
Curvature of the Earth. Most of and missing info on the first 2 pages of your Google search, including this very first one right here. In an earlier question on the curvature of the Earth, Harley showed that the Earth curves approximately 8 inches
per mile, but he's talking about the curvature of the Earth under a global setting. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the firmament, because remember, the firmament is a lens, and that is basically what pressurizes the atmosphere to have a curve or not have a curve. And basically, this guy is saying 8 inches per mile. And what I was saying is that it is closer to a 9. And what I was talking about was relatively the firmament. And he's talking about the globe version of the Earth. But as you can see, he's saying it's 8 inches per mile that the Earth would curve under a normal circumstances. And I say that's completely bullshit, because I've been in an airplane and I can see for up to about 100 miles. And for about 100 miles, folks, there isn't but 1, maybe 1.5, maybe 2 degrees of actual curvature of the actual atmosphere that we see. Now, if the entire curvature of the flat Earth is, say, 3, then that would actually mean that the curvature of the actual dome, being the actual lens that pressurizes everything, yada yada yada, would actually be 9, which means the the body of the Earth would actually be a near perfect actual circle, thus having an angular, of 9, which the video actually showed. And that is why I actually believe that, believe it or not, folks, the actual firmament has a flat bottom, which is the surface of the Earth, and it has much more tubular, angular dome than what is currently being portrayed. And that is what I believe. Because it fits all the right models, it fits all the right curvature settings for an actual dome, and that's why when you see the astronauts and stuff and the space, NASA, EU, etc., going into the air, that is how they are able to angularly go up and at an angle to a certain height. And that is how they know not to just go straight across at a shallower angle, is because they know the dome is a lot more angular. And that is why they can get away with that. Now, we know that, lots of the first rocket tests blew up because they hit the dome. If you follow my page, we had a rocket video that hit the firmament, and it did, stop, and that was that. I mean, that was it. And yet there was a video of a weather balloon that went a lot less high, and the weather balloon showed an atmosphere which was nearly probably 1 to 3 degrees across in curvature of the actual Earth's atmosphere, being a very light, if not flat, curvature of the Earth, which is what we're talking about, a flat Earth. And so when somebody basically does go into the atmosphere near the dome, I believe they have a lot higher angular approach due to the fact that the actual firmament is probably a lot more angular, which is probably why, for a long list of reasons, why it's probably a lot more sturdy, because this dome here would be nice. And I know that the dome is a nice feature, and it looks like it might even have some angular look to it. And if you stretch it out a little ways, I imagine it probably worked just as well. But if anybody knows anything about ballistics, the 9mm moves faster than most, if not all, the major handgun rounds because of its ability to volume, and it's because it's the perfect center of that 9mm, and basically that matches with the environment. It's able to move faster, cleaner through the atmosphere that we experience as the sky, the air we breathe, etc. And it has a lot less, atomic drag, I guess you'd call it, or drag of, any number of other things and features, wind, etc., depending on the distance you're shooting and everything else. And I know once you get out of the small caliber rounds, there are better angles, but the 9mm Luger fits this because it talks about what the prime angle is of a circle. And that is why I believe that the actual angle and the actual shape of the actual dome is very similar to the 9mm, almost a pyramid curvature shape. And that would allow so much more sturdy responses from various other things. And I have yet to read scripture or any other source that is not from the military or another group disproving that it is not an elongated firmament or elongated curved firmament. I have not read that in any source at all. So this is what I believe. NASA jumps between an angle of 6 and I think almost 11 degrees in angle for their globalist curvature, quote unquote, of the atmosphere, quote unquote. Well, how does the atmosphere form? Well, it forms by basically the lens of the dome, and if the dome is really steep at the top and it gives, that shape down below, then that means the atmosphere, or the, this part where space and the Earth actually meets, is actually going to be quite flat, which is what we're talking about. So this is why I believe it to be actually nearly true to have a tubular, almost pyramidical or pyramid-like angle with a flat base being the center of where the tabletop of the Earth would actually be. And I think this is actually a near good representation. And this dome shape here is another fallacy that we need to destroy to get into the realm of what is actually true. So, nobody really wanted to give me any good sources for this, so I decided to give you the curvature of the firmament. And I truly believe this because it fits almost all major mathematical models. It fits Fibonacci sequence, I believe, the golden spiral, the Kundalini, I believe, and everything else that you can name, because it comes back to the harmony of the universe and all the mathematical precisions that go into the tree of life and all the other noetic and is it noetic or nometic sciences that would actually explain, having a curvature, not having a curvature, and everything else. And remember, we're not talking about the Earth. We're talking about the firmament here. So I believe that this little shape here is actually quite false, and that the firmament actually exists a lot more like a spherical, almost pyramidical or pyramid-like dome top. I know it's probably a lot less pronounced than that, but it is definitely a lot taller than this one here, at least reaching to near where the V or the A is, depending on your point of where you believe the angle actually exists. But I'm quite certain of this, and I know that when you look into all the major numbers and all the major algorithms in the background, you would definitely say if and when there was a firmament, this standard model goes out the window because it does not fit the representation of what the sciences and the math and all the numbers, even in nature, correspond with. Thank you.